On the Singer Simple Sewing Machine, it is crucial to take the time to clean and oil the machine. Now, first off, oil does not come with this machine, so you do need to pick some up at your local sewing machine store. You want it to be nice and light. There is actual sewing machine oil, so make sure you pick that up. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the throat plate off and then take out the bobbin case and take 2 more pieces out. And I'll show you where to oil. So cleaning the machine, when you sew, there's a lot of lint that drops down beneath the throat plate. So take your screwdriver and loosen up these screws enough that you can, sometimes I can usually loosen them and then spin the rest with my finger here. One thing that you don't want to do is use canned air. Canned air is going to blow more into the machine than out. It's actually kind of dangerous for the parts that are all way back in that area. So make sure that you do use a brush. You could use a makeup brush. You can use a Q-tip. It's amazing what all goes down into the machine and when you start to stitch. 2, take out your needle. That's always a little easier, then you don't stab yourself. And if it's been a while since you've changed needles, once you replace that with a fresh one. Take the foot off. Again, it just makes it a little bit easier. I just pulled towards me. Make sure you don't push down. That can actually break that little mouth off if you push down too far. And when we go to put it back on, we just slide that back into place. Okay, with the 2 screws out, we'll take the throat plate off. Again, this is where all the lint is going to be. When we talk about lint, we're talking about fabric that is like your cottons, your battings, your minky, your flannel, your fleeces. All those are very, very linty, and this is going to gather up. And of course, then it's going to suck all the oil out that's currently in there. So next, take your bobbin out, or bobbin case out. You can leave that still all together. But then we're going to work with these 2 black arms that are kind of tilted in. So I'm going to push them out to their sides. And next piece that comes off is called a race. I don't know why, but that's what it's called. Kind of a little ring. It does have a place that at the top where it fits, and same at the bottom. So it's really easy to get back in there correctly. That little nub will fit right at the bottom part. Okay, set that aside. And the last guy is actually your hook. He's the one that does all the work for us. Now I do actually see that from the factory there's actually still quite a bit of oil that's on here, and I'm going to actually take a little bit off because I can see it is more than I would want. I do have to tell you that sewing machines usually are over-oiled before they actually come to you, and then that way if they stay in a box for more than, well, who knows how long they stay in a box. But I am going to just wipe all that off, and I'm going to put some fresh oil on. I can definitely see that that was worth taking out at the beginning and oiling. Okay, so fresh oil. And where you want to put it is, did you notice around the outside was where that kind of dark part was? So what we're going to do is just put a couple drops on that edge, because this is the hook. The hook, the sharp part right here, actually takes the thread and links it around the bobbin. So the needle thread goes down, it brings it down and connects the 2. That's where it plays jump rope. So every time a stitch is made, this goes back and forth, metal against metal every single time. So keeping it oiled is really key. So if your machine is sounding a little loud, it just is asking for oil. Okay, so what I'm going to do, you kind of see that there's a little half moon here, and this is the other half. I'm going to tilt the machine back just a little bit. Gravity can kind of help with this. And then also, this little hook right here is going to slip underneath this little extension. Now my hands are probably going to be in the way for just a second, but there's only one way it fits back in. You see how it nicely cups the edge, and that way you know it's all the way in. It's just sitting there right now, so it's okay, but it doesn't like click in or anything. Let's go ahead and add the race back. I'm looking for that little nub at the bottom. I'm going to line that all the way up, and that kind of covers up, and that keeps the hook in place. Next, take those black arms we sent out to the side, bring them back into position. Then our throat plate can go back into position to put those screws back in. And once we get everything threaded, since anytime you put oil in, it can actually get on your thread just a little bit, is to take some fabric and stitch back and forth a few times until your thread is back to its natural color. You don't have to do too much, but sometimes if you're going to sew on something white right after you oil your machine, you might get a little of that oil color, and that's not good on your nice white fabric. So you can go ahead, you don't have to tighten these a lot, but just enough to give it a little bit of solid part there. Okay, And here we go, we'll put our bobbin back in. Everything should turn nice and smooth. So if you want to, you can even turn your hand wheel and just make sure everything's kind of twisting smoothly down in that area. Notice what I'm putting on last. Not the foot, but the needle. The needle, if you put the needle in last, then you can actually use the foot to line it back up, and then it goes straight up. Make sure that needle gets as high as it possibly can go, and then turn and tighten that screw. Usually I say tighten it with your fingers. You can. Don't over tighten it with the screwdriver, but if you need just a little bit, if you don't have the strength in your fingers that you used to, tighten it with the screwdriver oh so gently, and then that way you can make sure it's where it needs to be. So we'll want to go ahead, thread up our machine, bring the bobbin thread up, and then we'll test and make sure we got everything back together when the stitches look good. Remember, take a few test stitches. So how often do you need to do this? We're talking about maybe every 2 to 3 bobbins that you use up. It's amazing how linty things get. Put a little drop of oil. The machine will thank you over and over if you do. So if it's been a while since you've oiled your machine or you've never oiled your machine, it is time. We also recommend that you have a sewing machine service on a regular basis. That way a service technician can actually get into all the parts that we didn't touch, since this is the only place you and I get to actually take care of. But once a year, have the machine serviced, and again, this machine will treat you right for a long time. All right, let's look and see. I'll show you what I'm talking about with that little bit of oil. Yep, I can see that my thread isn't as pink as it started. It's still a little dark here, so I'll just go back and forth a few more times, kind of work that oil around. If you pick a zigzag, for example, it can kind of go back and forth. A few more stitches before it reaches the end, maybe even go backwards here. See how quiet it sounds? That can make all the difference between a okay machine and a happy machine.